Assalamu alaikum. Today our topic is Among School Children, a poem by W.B. Yeats. This is our lecture number 5. William Butler wrote this poem in 1926. William Butler's poem Among School Children was most probably after his visit in that year to a progressive convent school at Waterfront St. Otrant's School. He visited a school and most probably, not confirmed, but most probably, he wrote this poem after that visit. William Butler, as we discussed in our last lecture, is one of the most important poets of 20th century, and he passed away in January 1939 after a career in prose, drama, and poetry. We discussed his poem last week, the second Easter 1916, in which we discussed in detail or thoroughly how W.B. Yeats is also considered Irish national poet, and William Butler Yeats was also belonged to two different ages. He also wrote many romantic poems, but later in his age, he started writing about poems related to Ireland, related to independence, and mostly he included the themes of modern age. The poem Among School Children was inspired by his Senate-sponsored visit at Waterfront Convent School when he was 60-year-old senator of the Fresh Irish State in the capacity of the inspector of schools. The poem begins in the first person I, most naturalistically in the standard pattern of a guided tour and reaches philosophical heights. In the words of W. H. Hudson, W. H. Hudson wrote, Yeats has a knack of raising occasional poetry to the level of profound poetry of universal appeal and significance. Among school children can be cited as an example. This poem is considered to be one of the finest of Yeats' composition, which attempts at synthesizing the 60-year-old smiling public man, the aged one-time lover, and the would-be philosopher into something as organic as a chestnut tree and as coherent as a dancer's movement. About this poem, in the first stanza, we talk about the first stanza. In the first stanza, uh, he describes the poet describes a visit to a progressive convent school at Waterfront for children between the ages of 4 to 7 years. This type of schools are called Montessori schools. This standard of education was very much new at that time in Ireland or in England. He visited the school in 1926 as a member of government committee as we discussed and appointed to investigate the state of Irish education. It was in that capacity that Yeats paid a visit to the school run by the nuns that are present in the church in the Montessori method of teaching. The topic for a poem as it is written on your slide, the school children and the thought that life will waste them, perhaps that no possible life can fulfill our dreams or even their teachers' hope. Bring in the old thought that life prepares us for what never happens. So what was Yeats doing in the classroom? Yeats is a senator as we discussed and he was at 60 years of age. The poet says that it was a long visit. In which he went the whole length of the school from one classroom to another classroom, asking all sorts of questions. Going along with him was a kind old nun in a white hooded dress and providing answer to his questions. In the school, Yeats finds the children, all girls in the age group 4 to 7 years, learning to solve arithmetical problems, to sing, to cut and sew. The students are also made to read books and histories. They are required to be neat and clean in doing everything. The girls are told to do everything in the best modern way, which refers to the Montessori method of teaching, which has been recently introduced. As I've told you, it was a recently added style in particular schools at that time. There is a surprise in the eyes of the girl students who are gazing with surprise in their eyes at a 60-year-old smiling public man, the officer. Among School Children is a highly elusive poem that links to its other Helen, Leda, Swan, and Peddler poems, which are highly linked. It echoes Honey of Generation from a different essay on the love of nymphs. It reflects Pythagoras' Golden Thighs from Poltrek's Life of Numa. The poem shows Yeats' scrupulous care for construction. It also shows that Yeats as a scholar familiar with art, history, and philosophy. Yet there are images which survive the questioning of life of the time, the nun's images, the mother. These can also be the images of art that keep a marble or a bronze response. These images can, however, seem to the poet mere images in contrast to real life beauty. He needs to elevate them further, or they will never satisfy, and hence the image of the dancer, which is self born out of mortality, created by the imagination, as is the image of the tree, here standing for the beauty of life itself. These images are created by an isolated poet, and this poem is in part a recording of the past, the tragic irony of the poet's conception of a state of perfection outside life, of being rather than become, out of nature into the timeless changeless of art. This state, ascended by a tragedy of over being born but to die, over being paradoxically dying generation, and not on form, also in Ottavia Rima, reflecting sense of journey and progression of ideas, typically used in heroic verses, suggests an epic task. This is the pattern A behave. Set and couplet are used, twisting and turning journey of the thought and fluctuations in mood. For example, frequent punctuation marks in the dash when you will see the read the poem. If we read the first verse, Yeats visit a long schoolroom. In his role as senator, he presents himself objectively with some irony as if seen through the eyes of the children, a smiling public man in the best modern way. Then what might Yeats walk through long schoolroom questioning also symbolize? What do you notice about the verb patrons? There is a level of irony in the stanza. First two examples. How does the used use embellishment? These are some of the possible questions related to verse 1. When you're going to read the first stanza, you should have some answer related to these questions. These questions should be in your mind while reading the first stanza, and then you should be able to answer these questions. Then verse 2. Here Yeats goes behind the mask, revealing the dreams behind the smiling public man, and memory of the leaden body of Mortgone and his younger, more romantic years. He remembers he telling a tale which united them both in mutual symphony. Leaden body reference to Leda, and this clearly Mortgone. Plato's parable, he uses Plato's reference in it, and White of the One Shell in Plato's Symposium. He tells the story of how Zeus, the god, divided man from his original double, nearly spherical shape into two halves. Love is an attempt by humans to regain lost sympathy. He is giving all references, Greek references. Then again, the question related to verse 2. Then verse 3, Yeats look at the children and wonders about Maud as a child. Was she like them? Greek reference. Yeats describes a fit of grief or rage. What is he grieving for? What is he angry about? Again, the questions you should have in your mind while reading the first stanza 3. Then verse 4. Becomes more of a memory stream of consciousness at this stage. Yeats reflects upon the passage of time and aging on both him and Maud, of course. The cultural and artistic events of 15th century Italy are collectively referred to as the encompasses the artistic styles of the last Middle Ages, most notably International Gothic and the early Renaissance, Da Vinci's time. Then again question related to verse 4. He actually published this poem in his famous collection of poems, The Tower, in 1928. And Yeats was 90, in his 60s when he wrote this poem, when he became the speaker of this poem. And in this poem, the speaker's visit to one school promotes him to reflect on old age, youth, beauty, and change. Although old age brings a decline from the beauty and freshness of youth, the speaker comes to see life as a harmonious whole, meaning that every moment has its own Pleasures and rewards. If one by one we see the stanza, we talk about the fifth one that is in front of you. Imagine a young mother with a baby on her lap. This baby has drunk the honey of generation in its mother's milk, a mythological drug that will cause the baby to forget its existence as a soul in heaven before it was born. The children must either fall asleep or cry out and try to resist the drug, either to remember its life in heaven or to forget. So its focus now shifts to mothers and children. What would a youthful mother think of her son at 60? Would she feel the pain of childbirth had been worthwhile while looking at his children? And honey of the generation is allusion to on the cave of nymphs and refers to the pleasure of generation and procreation. Then verse 6. In the philosopher Plato thought that the visible reality was like the form of a wave, while the true nature of the world was that what lay beneath that wave, an unchanging realm of abstract truths. On the other hand, the philosopher Aristotle believed that physical objects were what was most real. As tutor to the famous conqueror Alexander the Great, Aristotle was actually the tutor of Alexander the Great, which we also named as Sikandar Azam, who came to Asia as well and also to Multan as well. If you some of you know about him. And Plato was tutor of Aristotle. Socrates was teacher of Plato, Plato was teacher of Aristotle, and Aristotle was the tutor of Alexander the Great. So Aristotle would punish the young Alexander by spanking him with a strap of leather when he was his tutor. Meanwhile, world famous Pythagoras, who supposedly had a thigh made of gold, claimed that the movement of stars in the sky created music, which the Muses, goddess of poetic inspiration, overheard. These are all Greek mythologies, which cannot be true, of course, but these are the Greek mythologies, and he is drawing the reference from there. It is written in front of you in this slide. Plato, the idealist, dismissive of nature, whereas soldier Aristotle, more of a materialist, but remembered here as the tutor of Alexander the Great, whom he punished with a tawse, a Scottish word of schoolmaster leather strap. Then Pythagoras, the mathematician of that time and the famous astronomer, who believed in the music of spheres, music unable to rouse the interest of careless muses. Yeats reflects upon other philosophers, teachers, educators like Aristotle, Pythagoras, and such great names, and suggests that in spite of their achievement, they too were subject to the physical realities of aging and death. They also faced death. They were so much great, they were subject to physical realities. They achieved so much in their life, but still they had to face death. They are simply old clothes on old sticks, as he said. Again, question related to verse stanza 6. Then 8, 7, sorry. Good work is when people bloom or dance without hurting their bodies in order to please their minds, and where beautiful things don't need suffering in order to be created, and when gaining wisdom doesn't require ceaseless toil all through the night. O chestnut tree with your powerful roots and beautiful flowers, and as are you, your leaves, your flowers, or your trunk. He's saying them a dancing body, oh eyes filled with pleasure. How can we separate a dance from the person dancing it? Because he ended this poem with a very metaphorically question. Yeats returned to mothers and nuns, suggesting both worship images. Mothers worship their children, and nuns worship candlelight statues. Nuns are apparently more permanent. However, both are destined to have their hearts broken, and all images of apparent perfection only serve to mock man's condition. Then again, the question related to stanza 8, the 7, sorry. Then finally, Yeats returned to labor, which could refer to the suffering of humanity since the fall of Adam and Eve, or just more generally to work or art. Yeats resolves the conflicts of the human condition, suggesting that the labor life will only blossom dance when the body isn't sacrificed to the soul, beauty isn't born out of despair, wisdom is not achieved by hard toil. The final rhetorical question where he ended his poem suggests that in a chestnut tree all parts are needed to work in unity, and that in dance and the dancer and the dancers unified for that moment in time. It seems to affirm that it is impossible to reduce images to their parts. The section of the trunk of tree beneath the point where branches commence it boil, this is called. And these are the questions related to stanza 8 which you should read while reading all of your stanzas. You should be able to have some questions in your mind as well.